Good evening and welcome to Cooperative Vermont. I'm Matt Cropp.
And I'm Eric Davis.
We're coming to you live from VCAM Studios in Burlington, Vermont this Sunday, September 22nd, 2013. And we've got a really interesting interview lined up. There's about a project in Massachusetts in which an old amusement park is a group of fans of this amusement park that closed in 2000 are working to turn it into reopen it as a cooperative.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, we've got the news roundup.
So since our last taping, we've held it's our third cooperative happy hour now, correct? It was at Lab B Hackerspace in downtown Burlington, and we were fortunate enough to have a group of Japanese students and their professor join us.
Yeah, and they were on a really neat trip where they were going kind of around Burlington, learning about the general theme was like cooperatives and solidarity economy. So they went to the Intervale, they went to City Market. They really seemed to bop around and catch a lot of the cool stuff that's been going on.
Yeah, it was really amazing to hear them talk about all the stops they made. We know what sort of a special place Burlington is for cooperatives, but that really brought it home to me again. So that they could spend a week visiting all these co-ops in the Burlington area. And really get a diversity for that experience too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the gathering itself was, in addition to that, had a good mix of folks from different sectors, worker co-ops and there's a little presentation that Justin, who was on our show talking about Lab B, gave to sort of talk about the hackerspace model and answer questions that people had.
Right.
So hopefully, I think we've got plans for another co-op happy hour if anyone else is interested in sitting down and talking co-ops. That will be sort of after an event that's coming up that we'll talk a little bit more about on October 15th, called Co-ops Democratizing the Economy: Perspectives from Vermont and Mexico.
Did you want to show the picture?
Yes, we have also a picture from the co-op happy hour, sort of near the end, with our new Japanese friends. Yep, that's at Lab B.
You're tall, man.
Yeah, I'm always in the back of the picture. So that should be October 15th will be our next gathering of this sort. Now, the next thing on the agenda is something that Eric and I are both members of Vermont Federal Credit Union. Eric is on the board, and we at the last annual meeting there was a bit of a debate revolving around the kind of democratic practices at the credit union. So the previous year, or before that annual meeting, the nominating committee had put out a call for candidates, and a number of candidates applied, but they only actually put the two incumbents on the ballot. So there was not a competitive election, despite the fact that there was member interest. And so, in response to that, I raised a resolution at the meeting, basically calling on the nominating committee to allow anyone who is legally qualified to run on the ballot, so that there could be competitive elections, and competitive elections are what hold boards accountable. So the members could actually have the opportunity to make a choice. So that resolution passed by a pretty wide margin and a vote of the members at the annual meeting. And I just received a letter last week from signed by the CEO of Vermont Federal that outlined the legal sort of rationale for why that resolution, the credit union does not need to treat it as binding, but it's rather merely an advisory thing. We're allowed to make the resolution, but the credit union is not legally bound to follow it. So this is one of those things that kind of has exposed, I think, some of the limitations to democracy at credit unions. They're based on the cooperative principles. They are cooperatives, but there's a lot of kind of, when you actually try to do democracy, you can often run into some red tape and some pretty severe limitations. So it's now kind of an open question as to whether the credit union, the nominating committee, now that it's sort of declared that they have the autonomy to decide if they want to do the same thing they did last year and only, say, nominate incumbents, not facilitate a competitive election, but declaring that they have the autonomy to do that is one thing. They still have the choice of what to do. So in the next few months, kind of keeping our eye on that situation and seeing if if in fact the sort of the will of the members as expressed at the annual meeting will be honored, and a competitive election will happen at this coming annual meeting, or if it won't. And the proof will be in the pudding, I think.
So in other pretty big Vermont co-op news, the Vermont Health Co-op was one of several co-ops, or co-ops in big letters, consumer-owned and operated plans that received funding through the Affordable Care Act to set up a sort of member-owned, member-run health exchange. And I believe they received $33 million from the federal government to help set up this exchange. And after the state regulator said that they wouldn't be eligible to sell insurance in the exchange for several reasons, that issue sort of come to a head now. Mm-hmm. And the Medicaid services, Medicaid and Medicare services, had previously cut off their ability to access further loan capacity, and now had actually made the decision to ask for the money that they have from those loans back.
Right. So so once that request went in, the board met, and the board had been reshuffled due to sort of some conflict of interest issues that had emerged around the board chairman. So a number of new people had been brought in, including actual people from the cooperative movement, such as Steve Post, who's the CEO of the VSECU. And so they met after that announcement was made and voted to dissolve the co-op. And so that chapter is, it was before, it was kind of ambiguous. There's talk of the co-op trying to sort of reapply to the Department of Financial Regulation to get its license to issue insurance, but now it's kind of the book appears to be closed on this chapter.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Mm-hmm. Which their future in Vermont with the single payer was very uncertain. Mm-hmm. But losing a potential, depending on how it was organized, it could have been a way to sort of bring in co-ops together to mm-hmm. afford to buy insurance, which could have been a pretty neat opportunity. But
yeah, but I mean, sort of looking at also sort of thinking about what caused this failure. I mean, there's a number of factors, and if anyone's really interested, to read the Department of Financial Regulations report, there definitely did look to be some kind of fishy, sort of self-dealing situations that were either going on or at least had the potential to be going on. But I think there's also sort of a critique that was raised, especially by Don Kreis, who's an attorney who's very active in our state's cooperative movement. Was that it really sort of, even though it had the name co-op, it really didn't seem to be, it was something it was a co-op that was being built from the top down rather than the bottom up. So primarily it seemed that the energy was really going into sort of trying to navigate these kind of administrative bureaucratic mechanisms, but I really saw very little evidence of kind of on the ground outreach and organizing to sort of build support, kind of grassroots support for a co-op. There's looking around even on Facebook, that didn't even have a Facebook page. So mm-hmm. It seemed to be in many ways for anyone who is interested in the idea of cooperative healthcare, which I think both of us find, and a lot of people find a very interesting kind of alternative, with some great examples such as group health up in the Pacific Northwest. There could have been, I think, playing Monday morning quarterback, but there could have been some really interesting conversations and visioning that could have happened, and engaging people to sort of bring in this base of support for that. Yeah. But no kind of work or energy really went into that, and so when push came to shove, and it suddenly became a political issue whether or not the co-op would be allowed to even offer insurance, there was no base upon which to draw of supportive members or prospective members to sort of push back on that. It simply was the political issue was purely an administrative one, and it was a question of lawyers and not grassroots member support.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair critique. As someone that's interested in cooperative governance and so forth, it would have been really interesting to see how that whole thing ran. But
Right, yeah, because it was supposed to be, in some ways democratic, but you had this board that wasn't elected by members, so it wasn't. Again, and this is sort of one of those problems, and I think, I personally have some. I feel like the criticisms of the idea of sort of that kind of top-down version of cooperative development that doesn't either build on a community or build a community that provides the foundation for the co-op, but says, okay, just out of thin air, we're going to create a co-op, and it sort of inverts the process by which kind of like a healthy democratic culture of accountability can emerge.
yeah.
So that's, I think that's one of those things that we need to file under the like really big missed opportunities for Vermont and Vermont's cooperative movement, unfortunately. But so another fun thing that ate up way too much of my time in the last couple of weeks has been the whole fracas around Bank Transfer Day. So for those of you who don't remember, back in 2011, sort of right at the height of when kind of Occupy was expanding and very active, especially on social media, the idea of Bank Transfer Day went viral. And the idea was on November 5th, 2011, people would go to their credit union, their banks, take out their money, too big to fail banks, and put it in credit unions, which was, so lots of groups all over the country put energy into building that as an action. There were actions all across the country, including in Burlington, encouraging that move. However, an issue kind of emerged with this in that the person who created sort of the initial Facebook event that went viral, by the name of Kristen Christian, became very quickly the sole spokesperson for the phenomenon, for the movement, and then disassociated it very early on from Occupy. And you can debate kind of what the relative value of Occupy, et cetera, is as a brand, and all that. But what functionally that meant was that there were no real accountability mechanisms. And so she kind of ended up as this person who is the default spokesperson without any accountability to all the other activists who are putting their energy into it. And so gradually over time, the first event today was a huge kind of groundswell. Lots of people moved their money. But over time, it's evolved into this thing where it was more about promoting her as a sort of activist consultant type figure rather than really pushing for continuing the goal of, hey, let's move lots of people from let's get this mass consumer migration into credit unions from too big to fail banks. And so it sounds like our interviewee is just calling in. We'll be on the line. Just put on hold until we're ready to go. But so that was a fairly major issue with that this energy was not building a movement and more was kind of about building a personal brand. And so in the last few weeks, this also sort of manifested itself in a very authoritarian mode of behavior in social media, where dissidents were kind of banned rather than from speaking, rather than being engaged in terms of critiques over strategy and tactics and things. So that ultimately came to a head when there was on the 11th, when there was a big thread where a number of people got banned. And it became the sort of thing where a number of people who had negative experiences with this person in this leadership role all sort of found each other and realized that this wasn't like we hadn't had one-off negative experiences, but rather this was a consistent thing where these like very passionate activists who were willing to put time into this campaign were being kind of alienated and pushed out of it because their message wasn't feeding the goal of Christian. And so ultimately, after a bit of a conversation, we decided that we were going to form an alternative kind of, I guess you could almost call it, splinter group from Bank Transfer Day that's called the Bank Transfer Movement, with the goal of kind of sort of having space for open dialogue and a return to really the focus on the goal of getting people to move their money out of banks and into credit unions. And so we've put out the word for there to be direct actions at bank branches on November 5th to mark the 2-year anniversary of Bank Transfer Day. So we'll be, of course, doing one of those in Burlington if anyone's interested at where else but our most bailed out bank, Citizens. So if you have November 5th free, starting at 4 p.m., that will be the place to be.
Yeah, it's just, if I had a critique of Bank Transfer Day, it would be that there was all this momentum, and so suddenly it's sort of, since that event, focused on looking back at that event rather than continuing to move. It was so successful, continuing to move that.
Right,
that
building on
momentum
that base
forward.
rather than letting it just kind of coast. But yeah, so now finally, before we get to our interview, 2 events you should be aware of that are coming up. One was, of course, the November 5th Bank Transfer Day of Action at Citizens Bank starting at 4 p.m. The other is on October 15th. There will be a delegation of people coming up from an organization called the FAT in Mexico that has from their cooperative section. And we'll be having an event called Co-ops Democratizing the Economy, Perspectives from Vermont and Mexico. It'll be at the H.O. Wheeler Integrated Arts Academy in Burlington and go from 6 to 8 p.m. So if you're interested in that topic, there should be a really good conversation around that. But in the meantime, we've got, so we will now get our interviewee. Hello, Scott. Hello, Scott, are you there?
Yes.
Hey,
Hi.
Welcome to the program.
Hey, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
So Scott what's your position in terms of this organization, the new Whalom Cooperative?
I'm an elected from the current membership. In fact, I'm the board president.
And give us, before we kind of get into the details, a little overview about what this project is that you're working on.
Basically, what we're working on is to rebuild a classic amusement park, which was Whalom Park, on a smaller footprint, as a family entertainment center. Basically, a smaller version of a smaller amusement park, based on the original.
And so, for that original, what's the history of that? What's the background of this amusement park that you're trying to recreate?
Well, Whalom Park was an amusement park that was in Lunenburg, Massachusetts. It was built in 1893 by the Fitchburg and Leominster Street Railway Company to increase ridership on the weekends. It was a part of the railway company until 1935, when it was purchased by Henry Bowen, and the Bowen family had owned it up until 2000. So there was 108 years worth of history that was lost due to financial issues within the other owners of the park. Basically, what it is we'd like to. We'd like to preserve as much of the history as possible, but at the same time give the local attraction back to the community.
Scott, it seems like from the Facebook page that there's a real the community really identifies with this space. Could you maybe talk about how you identify with the park and how other people in the community identified with it?
Basically, it was part of the fabric of the area here in the north. It was known as the North Central Massachusetts Playground. It was, anyone who lived near it or outside of the area would go there and immediately feel at home, if you will. About 5 generations of my family went to the park, and everyone who's involved in this organization now had family members that went to the park. I actually worked at the park for one season as a ride operator. It was a great summer job, a great business to work for, and it meant a lot to so many people. And when it closed in 2000, it was a devastating shock and blow, if you will, to the community. I mean, there was some outrage, but there was some people involved in trying to preserve it. Some other organizations.
So the park had over 100-year history of really being part of the fabric of the community, and when it closed, was that something that the community was involved in, or can you tell us a little bit about that process?
What had happened is a year before it closed, the owners had decided that they were going to auction off the carousel, the classic Louvre carousel that was built in 1910. And what happened is once that went up, the community started getting together and said, no, we can't let something like this, that's part of the community, go. So they tried to block the auction. They tried to go in. Some people had actually bought pieces of it. An organization was formed in order to, once all the pieces were purchased, they were going to bring them back to the park and on a permanent loan basis to keep the carousel. What had ended up happening is a year later, the actual park was going to close. It closed in 2000, and it just didn't reopen. And people who were involved in saving and preserving the carousel had all their savings or money or everything invested into that, and they couldn't just jump ship and try to do something, in addition to trying to save the park. So the biggest thing was financial, and some of the owners wanted to get out, and it was just a sad time for the community.
So it's been 13 years now since the park has closed, and it sounds like there's a fair amount of energy now sort of around this idea of reopening it. Like what do you sort of see as the source of that energy? Is it this kind of intergenerational kind of a thing where people had experienced it and their parents and grandparents had experienced it, or like what are the things that really you feel like are driving people to support your campaign to turn this into a cooperatively owned amusement park?
Well, in the beginning, when the park actually closed, and even today, from when it closed in 2000 to today, and all these years in between, the community is really upset to the fact of that their backyard attraction, their park is lost, and that was lost, and they were upset that nobody had a say in it. I mean, if you have a favorite, place to go to for entertainment, and you're like, yeah, this is great and everything, and you go like every week or twice a week, that's great, but other people may not go as often, and regular private businesses rely on that that patronage. And what happens is if they feel as though that they want to get out of the business and nobody wants to buy it as the business, then they sell it as whatever they can get for it, and it has the customer base and the fans have no say in that. Mm-hmm. And that really upset a lot of people because they took their attraction away from them. This thing was bigger than any other, bigger than any movie theater or any other entertainment facility in this area, because it was part of the fabric for 108 years, and nobody had a say in it. And there's a documentary film that I watched, because it upset me to a point where, it sickened me that they were going to let this thing go and just put condominiums up there, and it was like, that's not right. And in the documentary film, there was a gentleman there, his name's Paul Porter, and the gentleman said when was asked what he'd like to see happen to the original property, this was before they started building, and he had said, this is the quote, that he goes, "I wish I was a millionaire, because I'd like to see it brought back to the way it was originally. And I know a lot of people who want to see that happen." And that sparked something in my head that said, well, wait a minute, what if we swapped that? What if we had a lot of people that got together and for a small amount of money get together and generate those millions, or that whatever it would cost to actually preserve it and do it? So then I started making some phone calls to some people, not knowing what I was thinking of was a cooperative, because I didn't know anything about the cooperative model at that time. So I started thinking about that and doing some research on it, and little things here and there, and we had a group of people that I found via the website, and I want to tell you that the internet has been a huge access point for people that are from all over who I've been talking to. And a gentleman from Singapore contacted me because we were talking about this thing on the online at different websites and different things. And he informed me that he's originally from Lunenburg, where the park was, and he actually worked there, and he was part of the fabric of it. And he and I talked for hours on end online, and he actually built our first website. And through that website, we've generated interest from other members. And another gentleman who is still with us is Andrew Probert, and he is a past Disney Imagineer. And he cold called me to be a part of this. So by talking to him and other people, and we started to have meetings at my house to see where we could go with this. And a woman had come over because she was in marketing and advertising and things like that, and she was looking for a job. Well, we were just in the real beginning stages of anything, and she realized it afterwards. And she asked us about what we were looking to do, and I told her the idea of, we'd like to get the people involved, the people to control it, the people to own it, and the fans to actually decide, what to do with it, and so on and so, how to make this work and how to make it grow. And she's like, oh, well, that sounds like a ski resort that my friends are owners of. And I asked her about that. And she's like, well, I don't remember the name of it, but I know it's in Vermont. Mm-hmm. And again, this thing with the internet, I was like, well, you can Google anything. So I Googled enthusiast-owned or skier-owned ski mountain, and it came up with the Mad River Glen. And that was my introduction into the cooperative model. Before that, I had no idea what the cooperative model was. And I saw that, and I immediately called them, talked to some people. I called some other people. Then I started researching the word cooperative, because I kind of heard it sort of, but never knew what it was. Mm-hmm. And then after a whole series of a few months, I started talking to business attorneys there locally. And what's funny about the cooperative model and a lot of lawyers and attorneys is that they seem to know what a cooperative is, but as soon as you mention it, they want to kind of veer you off into into the incorporated, and we're going to get some investors for you, and we're going to do this and some other things. And I'm like, that really doesn't sound like where we want to go. And they were talking about, it's simple. You want to invest, and you want to do this, and you're going to have a certain amount of members. You're going to have the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. I was like, whoa, that's not what we're looking at. Mm-hmm. So I said, so what do we do now? So the group said, well, let's continue to research it. There's got to be something out there or someplace or someone or whatever to do this. So I said, well, again, I went to the Google, and I Googled up a co-op attorney. And one name came up, and he's based out of Vermont, Burlington, in the Burlington area, I believe. And I called him, and he had said, and I told him the idea. I pitched the idea to him. This is what we'd like to do, and we spent 2 years researching this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And he goes, this is what we'd like to do. Is it possible that something like this could be a co-op? And at this time, I didn't know very much about co-ops. And he says, yes, this could fit as a consumer co-op. And then we started to talk about it. And I said, I found out about the cooperative model from the Mad River Glen. And he said to me, Scott, what's funny? It's funny that you should mention that, because I'm the one who put together the Mad River Glen. Huh. And this was like a cold, it was just completely amazing to me. So he and I and our group worked together for the probably last six 6 months to a year, because it took us a year to get took us a year to get information back and forth, and one person was in our group was kind of worried about the idea of a co-op because, again, like me, I didn't know too much about the co-op model.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know about, because, I mean, as soon as you say something new, it's like, well, I don't know. And then after about a year of trying to get the information we wanted to get, and he helped us, and we formed it through our current LLC, and now we're officially this past Saturday, yesterday, we had I guess you could call it the first co-op, the annual meeting. I guess you could say this was our first annual meeting to kick it off. It was a barbecue, and we officially signed our subscription agreements for the co-op. Our group, our small group right now, we approved our operating agreement, which is through an LLC. It's called an operating agreement, but it's formed as a cooperative formation.
Mm-hmm.
Elected our board of directors, and elected the officers in the co-op. And we did all this yesterday, and it wasn't that. Yesterday was planned, and you guys called me the other day, and it all fit in place this weekend.
Nice, congratulations.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
We're officially a co-op. This is the first interview that we've actually done it as a co-op, and on our Facebook, Whalom Park on Facebook, it's actually got there's a picture there that actually has a group of us, a founding group, actually signing our subscription agreement. So it's a really exciting time for us.
Absolutely, I can understand that. That's such a huge step. That's got to be really, really exciting. I'd just like to step back for one moment. You guys must have investigated, several different ways to form this organization. What was it, Scott, about the cooperative model that made you decide this is it? We gotta go down this route? Because there's the for-profit corporation. There's potentially doing it as a not-for-profit, and I know Matt and I are both really stoked that you chose a cooperative way to organize it. What sort of spoke to you about the cooperative model?
Well, the whole issue there was a lot of variables prior to all this. Again, going back to when the park closed in 2008, 2000. When the park closed in 2000, people were outraged and upset, and they didn't have a voice, they didn't have a say in it. And we wanted them, in this, and ever since it closed to now, we've always wanted to have the people in the community to have a say in how it's run, how it's established, how it continues the process. That was number one.
Mm-hmm.
And the second part of it is because of its demise, of how it happened, because it was just a handful of people who owned it, and they kept fighting all the time about how its future was going to go, and they didn't want to do this, and all that behind-the-scenes stuff, the people, its fans, the community had no say in that. So they did what they wanted and ultimately sold it for development,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what happened to its demise. So we wanted to have the people to have ownership of it, control it, and keep it from ever being in control of one owner or a majority owner to actually, decide for this whole process. And then 5 years down the road, now I hate to say this example, but if you look at it in the developer's, vision, if you will, in the developer's eyes, it's, okay, well, we're going to develop this business. It sounds great. It sounds awesome. We're going to build it. We're going to put all the money into it and everything. And in 5 to 10 years, if it doesn't make a profit, then all of a sudden they sell it, or
Mm-hmm.
they liquidate it, and then they flip it over to something that works in their eyes, because they don't know the business. They don't know the whole concept of it. So that was developers have the money to do something like this, and they can get things done really quick. Well, that scared us,
Mm-hmm.
because, okay, yeah, they have the money, and yeah, they can do what they want, but they don't have the passion and the I mean, this is what we've been doing. We've been looking at the amusement entertainment, industry for the last 5 years, really hardcore 5 years. The last 2 years, looking at this kind of ownership, and this whole ownership. And we thought about it, it's like, we got to do it as a nonprofit, because a for-profit, a park like this may not actually make enough money as a for-profit entity to survive. So if it's a nonprofit, all the money will be reinvested back into it. And the nonprofit organization system, 501c3 thing, that kind of put us off, because you had to go and get approval from the federal government and the state government in order to do that. And we've had the experience of we talked to other businesses that have a very hard time getting that approval from the federal and state for a project like this, because this project, as amusement entertainment, does not fit in any specific category. So you're either going to build homes or condominiums, or you're going to build office buildings, or you're going to build Target stores. Mm-hmm. Those are pretty much all that happens. There's not very much amusement entertainment. So developers and things like that, and all those other for-profit entities don't kind of fit into this. And the cooperative model, unknowing to us, fit this whole concept. And it answers all the questions and all the things that we had a list of things that we wanted to accomplish. And the cooperative model accomplishes all those things. It's a nonprofit. It's a nonprofit entity. Granted, people who either donate or help us out, they can't get the tax write-off, but that's not what this is about anyway. Mm-hmm. And the fans want to see this park. So I mean, there's a huge link, a huge draw, a huge passion involved in this park, this original park, that they want to see it come back. Now, the nice thing about what Whalom Park was is it wasn't a Six Flags, which Six Flags is in Agawam. It's about a 2-hour drive from where we are, from where the original park was. It's not like a Disney, and it's not like, and those parks are good. I'm not knocking those parks. I mean, that Six Flags is Six Flags. You go there, you know what you're going to get. Disney's a Disney. You go there, you know what you're going to get. But a Whalom is like a small family entity, an amusement attraction for the surrounding communities, for central New England. And it had that family ownership appeal, because the families just did things, kept it cheap, kept the prices low, to a point where, mom and dad could bring the kids, not just once, but a handful of times to this attraction through the course of the summer season. And that's what it was. It was, hey, and it was a lot of expenditures when people go out to spend their disposable income, which is not as much as it used to be. When they go to spend their disposable income, they want to do something that's cost effective, and they want to do something that's fun and that's long lasting. And this is what they would spend their money on. Is let's go to Whalom Park for the night, or when they used to offer, like during the weeknights, during the the heyday season, they used to offer like $5 after 5. You go in the park and ride all the rides, and so families would jump at that and head out over there. Another nice little thing about the connections, if you will, when we actually filed for our name, the first name, before we changed into the actual cooperative, when we filed for our first name, we filed through Boston, Massachusetts, through the Secretary of State of William Galvin's office, and we called, and we haven't heard anything whether or not we were able to get the name. And in the name, it had the new Whalom Park was in the name. And so I said, you know what, we're going to have to call because I haven't heard anything. So I ended up calling the Secretary office, and I got one of the people that take the phone calls. And I asked him, I was like, yeah, sure, how can I help you? And I asked him, I was like, we're looking to see if we actually secured the name, for our company. He's like, what's the name? And we said, New Whalom Park, And he looks at me, oh yeah, it's right here. You secured the name, New Whalom Park. That's right there. He goes, now can I ask you a question? I was like, yeah. Does this have anything to do with Whalom Park in Lunenburg? I was like, well, yeah, it does. He goes, oh, that was a great park because I used to go there. And I live in Boston, and I grew up in Boston. That's what he was saying to me. He goes, and we used to go there. Come to find out, after a nice, good 25-minute conversation with this gentleman, the original park would send buses out to Boston and pick up the inner city kids and bring them into the park for the low price to enjoy that entertainment. And he remembers that, and he and I exchanged stories with it. And of course, at the end of the conversation, he asked me, whatever happened to that park, and I told him the story how it closed, and he's like, oh man, he goes, that place was fantastic. He goes, I have great memories of that place, and you have memories of that place that linger with you more so than the big places. And that really kept us going. Stories like that. So the other thing about the cooperative model here, after hearing about that gentleman, it's the co-ops are necessarily community based in the neighborhoods or in that surrounding area to utilize the park or service. In this park that we're putting it into the cooperative model, it doesn't quite fit the local community. It actually fits the Whalom community, which it's basically worldwide in the Whalom community, because most of the people who lived in this area went there. Like I said, generations, about 5 to 10 generations of families went to this park over the years, and they've grown up and moved away to other states. And like I said, that one gentleman actually moved to Singapore. So all these people have expressed interest of, if we can bring this back and bring it in a way where it preserves the identity of what it was, preserves that, and brings something for the here and now, and then establishes it to continue to the future. People are excited to be a part of that.
I can only imagine how many of those stories that you hear. We were checking out your Facebook page, and I think you guys are closing in on 19,000 likes, and we were reading the comments and just seeing how excited people were about this idea, and it seems like it seems like it really does strike a chord with people, deep down. Now that you guys are formed as a co-op, what was that meeting like, and what's the community response been to this decision?
Well, so let's see. So Saturday's meeting, when we officially, we went through all the process with the attorney and get everything ready, and we're now officially the co-op, and with the operating agreement, the subscription agreements, and everything. At this meeting, we signed our signed our subscription agreements, which that was exciting in itself, and created the whole process, absorbed all the process to actually be the co-op. Mm-hmm. And then when we announced it later on that day, I've been wanting to do this announcement for this, because we've known about it for a long time. This is the way we're going to go, and I thought, well, in a couple of months we'll be able to have everything situated. Well, it took longer, and I kept saying we're going to have a big announcement, and it just didn't happen. But then when we finally were able to announce it yesterday, there's actually a person on the comments there who actually wants to become a member right now, and people are really interested. There's a real buzz about it. So at this point, we're looking to do some events so we can actually have our subscription agreements out there so people can get involved right there. And we're hoping to get our website is in the process of being upgraded to match what we are. I mean, we were kind of like a cooperative ownership without actually being a co-op, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're officially the co-op, so now officially we have to make some changes to fit that. So we're excited. I mean, the community is excited that, you know, we have to go through this process first in order to generate the capital. And from whatever we generate in this capital, we're going to see where we can go from there. That'll reflect on our business plan and other things to fit those goals. What we'd like to do is, like I said, we're going to do a family entertainment center, so it's a smaller footprint, probably between 4 and 15 acres. The original park was situated on 33 acres between parking lots and picnic groves and other things like that. So we want to start with small, and it'll be a family entertainment center, which is a smaller version. It's like the small amusement park. It's low key. There's some things of indoors, something of outdoors, and it's a lot more cost effective to start out that way and then do branch out in expansions slowly. So we're really excited. The community is excited. We're hoping that we can move forward. We now feel as though, now that everything is set, and now we can sell the units, which is the shares. LLC calls them units, so we have to call them units, but that's technically the shares. Now that we can sell those to the public, now we feel as though that we're actually moving forward to the point where we can actually start accomplishing more. I mean, it seemed as though that, okay, we're set up, but we couldn't really get anybody to invest, because that was the big thing about other people were saying, well, invest. Well, nobody was stepping forward to invest. But now that the co-op model has come out, more people have come out because they're more excited about it. Because now they have the one vote that'll you know, to vote the board of directors in, to vote on the operating agreement, which is a living document. So if there's something that needs to be changed, the owners could do that. If there's something that they want in the park, they can vote something of that nature in. They want to. This whole concept to me was really a cool idea, because not only can they do the corporate governance part of it, the cooperative governance part of it, but they can also do the actual amusement part of it. So when you go into this facility, I mean, not to compare it to like a food co-op, but I guess you could say we're the food co-op of amusement and entertainment. But if you go into your local attraction, you could say, you know, we really want to see more of this and less of that. We want to see more of a kiddie land, because we bring more smaller kids there than there are adults. Adults would just like to go in and hang around with their kids. Like grandparents, you know, grandparents don't like to ride all the thrilly, you know, twirly rides, because they're at the age where that's not their thing anymore. But they could bring their grandchildren in for that. So all these different walks of life have a say in how it's all laid out. So
right, and they get to say it as an owner rather than as a customer.
I mean, I would have, as someone just coming into this and saying, hey, we're going to make this into a co-op. You can be a part of it. You have a say into it. You can vote and do other things. I would have bought a share instantly.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that that kind of brings up for me, and I'm, you know, and also sort of you talked repeatedly about sort of the passion that people have for this space and this idea of the Whalom community, which, you know, used to have a place that was, you know, an actual physical location, and now, you know, you guys still connect over this Facebook page and other places, but, you know, this project feels like it's very much about kind of bringing, you know, achieving a physical space again for the Whalom community. But one thing I was wondering is the idea of, you know, member work. You know, I know Mad River Glen does this, and in some ways it seems like you've already got volunteers, you know, stepping forward and offering their skills in a way that, you know, in many ways can kind of offset the the problems with the amount of revenue and things like that. Like for instance, the fellow from Singapore you mentioned who set up who set up the website. Do you have a sense of kind of like ways that that members, when you're envisioning this, will be like more involved in the running of the park itself too, to any extent?
Absolutely. For example, when we started this project, there's another board member and myself. We have our other job, and we like our other job, and we like doing our work. But ultimately, we would like this amusement, this park, and this whole thing really to be our goal is to be our job, is to work at the facility, to be a part of it, and members. I'm not saying you have to be a member in order to work there, but obviously members are going to want to be involved in it,
mm-hmm.
and whether they volunteer, or whether they collect a salary, or however they want to do it. I mean, we've already had people, say we'd love to help you out with this, and we'd like to. And the thing is we have a whole slew of people who want to help and they want to volunteer. It's just right now it's all about. I hate to say this, but it's all about the financial part of it.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get the financial part of it, we can get the facility going. And when we get the facility going, we can get people to volunteer for that. Another thing, a good example of volunteering for us is we have a lot of events that we'd like to put together, and it's hard to put together events. I mean, we're a handful of people that all have different schedules between family and work and things of that, and for all of us to get the same night off or the same, we're looking into doing a carnival in the spring, so that's 4 days. So for all of us to have like the time to do it, it's great, but we would like to see more volunteers participate in those things, mm-hmm. and it's just to organize those things. But we've had people that geez, this sounds great. We want to be part of it. How can we help? And it's like we got to find a place for them to fit. Another good thing is that on the subscription agreement, there's a check the box statement if we'd like to volunteer services or whatnot. And there's a list what your services are that you'd like to volunteer. So what you're probably getting at is like if someone was an accountant or a lawyer or maybe in maintenance or something like that or that nature, or someone who actually worked in amusement lightly and had some idea of some stuff, mm-hmm. if they could volunteer those services. And that's an absolute yes. I mean, members. I mean, we want people to be involved in this. I mean, basically, the whole the whole process here is, we need the equity, which I like to call. We've been kind of toying with the idea of calling it passion equity, mm-hmm. because it's not like anything else. It's not like a corporation or conglomerate. It's people are involved in this because they have the passion to be involved in this, to preserve it, to bring it back and. To bring it back in a different way, but while preserving it, that's passion for it, and that's what we're experiencing is a lot of passion for this for this park.
So, we've got about just a couple minutes left in the show, but what do you see as you're now obviously the campaign to get the money together is the big one. Have you guys connected to any other sort of cooperative organizations in your region now that you're legally a co-op, in terms of finding either like mentors around the cooperative model or support for the project or anything along those lines, like credit unions or food co-ops and things like that?
We're finding our bank accounts. Right now, are part of one of the local cooperatives. One of the local credit unions. But that's really all we have right now. We're looking to see that in this area we haven't really found very many cooperatives, and we're like the odd man out because we don't kind of fit with other co-ops. 90% of the consumer co-ops that are around here are food co-ops, and they're far and few between. But we're open to partner up with any of them. I mean, we'd like to partner up with other co-ops. I mean, that being said, I mean, obviously a food co-op is a consumer co-op, and they would know, or they would have an idea of what works when you do membership drives and how to do membership drives and how to do some of the going out there and generating the interest to say, hey, we're a co-op of such and such. We have members, we have the voting rights, and we have all the same thing. I mean, we're all the same thing. We're just different organizations, but we haven't really seen any organizations that may fit what we are. I mean, I could be wrong on some levels, but like I said, we're willing to embrace any co-op that's out there that'll help us out.
Awesome. Well,
just one final thought on that. Down the road, it'd be so cool to have food co-ops and credit unions have like their annual meetings at the park.
Yeah, that
would be a cool deal. I never really thought of it quite like that, but and it'd be like these the credit unions are like one family, and the food co-ops are another family, and they all come to the new Whalom Park as our family. So
I know that in terms of electrical co-ops, some of them out west have very big annual meetings, and I know of one in particular where they actually have a carnival sort of as part of their annual meeting. It becomes this like big family-friendly celebration of community.
Bring the kids,
and how awesome is that? That we're a co-op, an amusement co-op, and we're already as an established amusement park, say. For the example, and all these other co-ops or credit union families in this area could do the same thing, but just come to us, and we're all still part of the family. Awesome.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show and discussing this awesome project with us.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for having me. Anytime you want to talk to me, anytime I'm available.
Scott, it's really exciting to see this.
This was so much fun, and I'm a fan, so I'm going to continue to watch no matter what. So,
thanks again. It's really exciting to see the cooperative model being applied to amusement.
All right. Well, so we will be back again in 2 weeks with another show, and we'll be keeping our eye on New Whalom and seeing if there's any new developments. So again, for folks who are interested in getting involved in our cooperative movement here in Vermont, 2 upcoming events to be aware of are the October 15th Co-ops Democratizing the Economy Perspectives from Vermont and Mexico. They'll be happening at the H.O. Wheeler Integrated Arts Academy in Burlington. And November 5th will be the Bank Transfer Day of Action out in front of Citizens Bank, starting at 4 p.m. So if you're interested in encouraging people to move their money out of too-big-to-fail banks and into cooperative credit unions, that'll be the spot to be. All right. So until our next episode, you can always check out the latest happenings related to Cooperative Vermont on our blog, coopvt.wordpress.com, or on our Facebook page. And we should be posting a copy of this episode up on YouTube in the next day or so. So if you only caught a piece of it, you can always head to our YouTube channel and catch the full episode and all of our previous episodes. So until then, I'm Matthew Cropp.
And I'm Eric Davis.
Good night.